Yo, you're probably losing a bunch of sales deals because you're acting like a clown on your sales calls. Your behavior is all off, and we got to fix that. This is a part two series of the five-part of how to achieve sales call excellence, discos, demos, any sales meetings. This is going to help you improve that. And I know this because this is one of the things that I teach to the over 200 members of my software sales coaching academy that I run today. I already ran a video about how to frame the call. This is the behavior on the call. So what I'm going to walk through is, what is it? Why? How? And then how to think about landmine situations that you run into. So first is the what. We think about the behavior of the call. This is really hard for a lot of sales reps to understand. And the reason why is many reps leave sales calls, whether it's a discovery call, a qualification call, whatever it is, and they feel like they nailed it. And when I dig into it with them, I say, how'd it go? Like, oh, it was crushed. It was awesome. Well, what made it amazing? Well, I got all this information. I learned about them, blah, blah, blah. Then when I started digging into, well, how do you feel about it being a conversation, it being productive, in the engagement, and the back and forth? They start to say, well, there wasn't a whole lot of that. Okay, well, this is probably why. Okay, so these are the soft skills. These are soft skills that you need to think about how you approach it, both from a mindset and then your ultimate behavior. Because of this, when reps don't master this, they'll check all the boxes and they still lose the deal and they wonder, what did I do wrong? It's because you didn't spend enough time trying to understand the behavior and how you think about these meetings. Because what it ultimately comes down to is buying experience. If I'm a buyer, your number one goal for me in every interaction that we have is that I leave that interaction saying that was a good use of my time. And your behavior and how you act, how you think, how you communicate, and I'm going to break that down in a sec, that'll make or break how I feel about that meeting. And if I don't feel like it was productive, guess what's going to happen? I'm either going to go dark on you, or I'm going to kill the deal and I'm going to choose your competition. Okay? So that's the what. And the why, just to reiterate what I said, this is about experience. When a survey was done for B2B buyers, they asked, what was the number one factor that went into choosing a specific buyer or vendor over another when all things were created equal? And they said it was buying experience. So this is about providing a great experience for your folks so that you can increase the chances to win the deals. So now we did the what and the why. Now let's talk about the how, and I'll talk about the framework of how we think about it. Number one is detach. Number two is S2U. Number three is language. Number four is sound. Okay? And I like to think about them in this order. All right. So number one, detach. So this is really hard. And I'll give you an example of what it means to detach. A VP of mine, when I was early in my career, he said to me, he said, Justin, you need to act as if you're already at quota every time you get on the call with a client. And I said, well, what do you mean? What do you mean? Like, I'm not at quota right now. I'm grinding every day. It's like when you act as if you're at quota, then you don't sound like you need their business. And when you come across as you needing their business, well, they can feel that. It creates an uncomfortable dynamic, an uncomfortable environment. So you need to be detached. So what I would say to you, if you're struggling with this, is just understand, what happens if you lose this deal? Are you going to die? No. What happens if you miss quota? Are you going to die? No. Can you get fired? Yeah. Will that suck? Of course. But is it the end of the world? No. So if you can wrap your head around that and just understand it's not the end of the world, that's going to help you detach. Now, that doesn't mean we don't do everything we can to win, but the mindset and how we communicate has to be, we are not trying to sell you, we are trying to help you. And in order to help somebody, we have to go in seeking to understand before seeking to be understood. So when you go to a doctor, you probably have a reason why you're there. Your knee's bugging you. Well, what does the doctor do? They ask a bunch of questions. What have you been doing? Where did this start? How would you try to fix it? Right? They do all of that first before prescribing what to do next. So think about yourself as a doctor in your deals. You have to seek to understand the situation before making proper recommendations. Now, that doesn't mean that you shouldn't come in with an educated hypothesis. You should be well prepared and you should understand the context before the call. Absolutely. but you do not assume. Because when you do, you make an ass out of you and me. And we don't want to make an ass out of you in our sales calls. So you have to seek to understand. And I'll give you another example just to bring it home. Let's say you're on a first date with somebody. You go out to coffee, getting to know them, and 5 minutes into meeting with them, they're like, you know what your problem is? And they go on this rant. You're going to think, it's been 5 minutes. You don't know me. You don't know me. Like, you don't know anything about me. It's 5 minutes. That's how you sound in your sales calls. So don't assume you can help them after 5 minutes or 10 minutes. We have to understand the context, what's going on, before we can make recommendations. So again, this goes into not only, of course, the questions that you ask, asking follow-up questions, framing them appropriately, using the fall framework that I break down in another video. Most importantly, we just have to go in with the mindset of we're trying to help, nothing else, nothing more. So seek to understand. Now, going into the language, this is really important to help build rapport with people. Language is one of the biggest ways to accelerate them feeling trust within you. And what I love to do when you think about your behavior is being actively present and using their language in how you communicate. So here's an example. Let's say I'm talking to a sales leader and they're struggling with their sales team execution, right? And I'll ask, from every time I'm talking to a sales leader in 2024 going into 2025, when we're thinking about budgeting season, the number one thing that comes up with these leaders is they're trying to do more with less, because the venture capital world, money's not cheap like it was 5 years ago. So you're getting less and less budgets, but you're going to be asked to produce more with your team than ever before. So when you think about, for you, how are you approaching that going into next year? That might be the way I'd frame the question. And they might come to me and say, well, the sales team execution is what I needed. There's definitely a couple things that I'm trying to improve. Like, number one, it's really discovery. All right, so instead of going in and just jumping to the next question, I'm going to ask a layering question. And I'm going to give you an example of how silly this sounds. So let's say you meet with a friend of yours and you go to coffee and they say, you know what, Justin, I'm just having a bad day. My girlfriend just broke up with me. You're not going to say, okay, great, got it. So what are you doing this weekend? You'd be a jerk of a friend. That's a weird interaction. So every time they say, well, our sales team is executing our discovery wasn't where we want it to be, when you say, okay, great, got it, tell me what else is going on. You sound weird. It's not a conversation. Now it becomes an interrogation. That means you're not present in the dialogue. Because of that, you're not building rapport. So an amazing way for you to show them that you care, you show them that you're genuinely curious, is you use their language in your follow-up question. So I understand execution's a priority for you, and you mentioned discovery being the big thing you're working on. Can you clarify exactly what you mean by discovery? Because that could be business discovery, technical discovery, a bunch of things that could be. Could you unpack that a little bit? So by asking that layering question, using their language and making that a priority of how I ask questions, that's going to help build rapport. That's going to be a proper behavior to increase the trust in the relationship. That's going to be a better experience for them. Okay. Last but certainly not least is this is physically how you sound on the call. Are you matching their communication cadence? If there's someone from, let's say they might have a southern drawl and they speak a little slower, which people do that, and they're speaking like this and how they're communicating, that's how they speak. What you shouldn't do is say, great, thank you so much for the information. Let me ask you that, blah, 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 blah. You're going to lose them. Match their communication cadence. That builds rapport. Are you concise with how you communicate? Every time they ask you a question, are you going on a 7-minute rant? Every conversation intelligence tool in the world right now can easily show you your talk time. You should be looking at that. Pay attention to how concise you are. Are you speaking in a smooth, calm, and relaxed tone? Or are you trying to sell them? These are the things that are hard to measure, but it's going to move the needle. Okay? Real quick, if this has been helpful for you, and you want me as your personal coach or want to learn how I help software sales reps just like you increase the results so they can take more control of their career, should be a link in my bio or below to book a call to me with my team to see if we can help you just like we've helped a bunch of other folks. So walking through how we detach ourselves from the outcome, seeking to understand before seeking to be understood, using their language, being present, and sounding like we actually care and we're calm and we're matching their communication cadence. These are the things that we're going to do to help provide a better buying experience.